The silent person's departure is not sudden. They leave gradually, not suddenly. At first they talk less, then less. They respond to messages late, and sometimes, well, they don't respond at all. They become a little distant even when they are with you, but you don't see it, because the silent person doesn't show it. Their silence is a strength. They don't create drama, they don't shout, they don't make noise. They just measure, analyze, feel, and make a decision. This decision is built in their inner world and only appears at the right moment. The silence of the silent person is a message to you. I'm tired. I don't want to explain everything anymore. I'm going to protect myself. This silence may scare you, but in fact, it is a deep power. They feel every detail, your gaze, your tone, your behavior, even your silence. But they don't show it openly. Because they have already learned, not every feeling needs to be expressed, and not everyone will understand. Silent people are the people who feel the most. They measure what you say, what you don't say, your behavior. They make decisions about you quietly. This is their power. They remain silent, but they see and feel everything. But if a silent person decides to cut you out of their life, take it as a warning. This decision is not immediate, but it is definite. They will no longer invest in you. They will no longer share their energy, attention, and feelings. They are not coming back, because you broke their trust once, and they don't want to give it back a second time. Even if their departure is silent, the impact is great. You are left alone, not as you thought, in a void that you never fully understood. The silence, calmness, and distance of a silent person are just a way of protecting themselves. They don't create drama, they don't shout, but they see everything, analyze everything, and only act at the right time. If you have such a person in your life, it is important to listen to them and appreciate them. Losing them happens not only because you think about them, but also because you don't listen to them. When a silent person is silent, it is their strongest voice, their strongest warning. And most importantly, silent people do not come back. They go silently, they disappear silently. You are left alone and not as you thought, in a void that you will never fully understand. Their silence is a message, a test, and also a strength. Losing them is not only because you think about you, but also because you do not listen to them. When a silent person is silent, it is their strongest voice, their deepest warning. When silent people leave, a gap is created between your life and the silence. They may seem cold, but in fact it is their wisest decision. Trusting everyone, trying to explain everything, is pointless. They remain silent to protect themselves. They carefully observe the people around them, analyze every gesture, every look, every word. They feel everything, but they don't express it. Silent people don't do it dramatically when they leave. Their departure is quiet and selective. At first you don't notice. They respond to messages late. Sometimes they don't respond at all. But deep down the decision has already been made. They will never come back. Their silence is a warning. This silence tells you, I'm tired. I'm going to protect myself. I'm not going to explain everything to you anymore. The departure of a silent person is, well, a lesson. They leave quietly, but it leaves a huge impact on your life. Their absence makes you feel empty, but this empty space teaches you a lesson. Be attentive, value, listen. Their quietness, selectivity, and distance are actually their strength. They don't create drama, they don't shout, but, they see everything and feel everything. Their every decision is measured and purposeful. If you have such a person in your life, appreciate them. They are rare, and when they completely trust someone, it is a rare value. The silence of every silent person is a story, and honestly, the silence of every silent person is a lesson. It is your responsibility to lose them, to not understand them. But once they are gone, they never return. Their silence, their calmness, their distance are, in fact, their strength. When a silent person leaves, they leave silently, but their influence remains. This silence is the most powerful voice, the deepest warning. The silent person does not hesitate to speak. He simply knows that his words often do not reach the other person. His silence is misunderstood, but in fact, this is his greatest strength. Before he spoke, tried to explain everything. But no matter how much he explained, those in front of him did not understand him. The answer to each word either came late or was not fully understood. Thus he learned. Some words, it's useless. Some feelings shouldn't be explained. Not everyone will understand. And he began to be silent. At first he spoke little, then even less. And finally he fell into a deep selective silence. People perceived this as coldness, indifference, but in fact it was the most intelligent way to protect himself. Silent people observe everything carefully. They analyze your gaze, your tone, your behavior, even your silence. They feel everything, but they don't express it openly. A person who has been hurt once does not want to experience the same thing a second time. They do not create conflict, do not shout, do not create drama. They quietly walk away, and this is their most dangerous strength. You realize this too late. Their departure is not sudden. They leave silently 100 times, but no one notices it. And one day they leave once and for all and never come back. The departure of a silent person teaches you a lesson. You learn to listen, pay attention, and appreciate them. They feel love and value, but they do not show it openly. If a silent person remains in your life, you need to protect them. It is rare for them to give themselves completely to someone. But if they decide to walk away, take it as a warning. When a silent person leaves, it is not just a physical departure. They are also emotionally gone. That is, they stop thinking about you and feeling you. And honestly, the hardest truth is that a silent person does not come back because they have forgotten you, but because they no longer feel you. And this is not a coincidence. It is the result of a long-term internal decision. In the end, one realizes that the silence of a silent person was never empty. It was just necessary to understand it in time. But this understanding often comes too late. Only after losing, one realizes that the person in front of him was actually trying to say a lot by remaining silent. Those signals were simply not read correctly. In retrospect, everything becomes clearer. Those late responses, that waning interest, that changing tone, they were all a message. But at the time, they were either ignored or not taken seriously. A silent person never changes suddenly. That change is, well, really the result of a long process. It simply escapes attention because this process is going on quietly. Later, one realizes that in reality, the problem was never silence. The problem was not seeing the reasons behind that silence. A silent person is silent not because he does not speak, but because he is not understood. He is silent because he is tired of explaining. He is silent because he sees that saying the same things over and over again does not work. And after a point, he no longer wants to talk, because he knows that the other person will not change. At this stage, silence becomes a choice. This is no longer a compulsion, but a decision. A decision made to protect oneself. When a silent person leaves, in fact, they have been gone for a long time. You just realize it too late. Their last step is actually the result of a decision made a long time ago. And a person only starts to think after they leave. Thoughts like, I wish I had been more careful, I wish I had listened to them more arise. But these thoughts are already too late. Because a silent person does not return. He leaves not only physically, but also emotionally. and it is impossible to bring back a person who has left emotionally. This is one of the most difficult truths, because no matter what you say or do, his decision will not change. In the end, there is only one lesson left. You need to listen to people not only when they speak, but also when they are silent. Because sometimes the most important things are expressed not in words, but in silence. The silence of a silent person is never empty. This is simply a state of unspoken thoughts and unexpressed feelings. Just because a person doesn't talk doesn't mean they don't feel anything. On the contrary, they often feel more, they just don't need to share it. And getting to this point isn't easy. It takes time. At first, a person talks, explains, and tries to understand the other person. But as they experience the same things over and over again, they realize that not everything is solved with explanations. After a while, they start to conserve their energy. They no longer react to every topic. They don't try to explain themselves in every situation. Because they know that if the other person doesn't want to change, no matter how much they talk, the result will be the same. The most important thing in a relationship for a silent person is to be understood. If they don't feel it, they slowly withdraw. This withdrawal may not be obvious, but it is felt in their behavior. For example, they no longer share the things they used to share with you. They are indifferent to the topics they used to show interest in. Their communication with you decreases. These changes may seem small, but in fact, they are part of a larger process. The most common mistake is that these changes are not taken seriously in time. People think of it as fatigue, busyness, or a temporary state. But often, this is the beginning of internal distancing. At this stage, the silent person begins to make decisions internally. He thinks about whether it makes sense to continue the relationship. If the result does not satisfy him, he emotionally distances himself. Emotional distancing is honestly the most critical stage because, at this stage, the person is still physically there, but he no longer feels the same as before. This situation can last for quite a long time. The other party often does not understand this because there is no obvious problem, but in fact, the relationship is no longer the same as before. The departure of the silent person is also the result of this process. He does not leave suddenly. He first reduces his feelings, then his attachment, and finally completely distances himself. At this time, the possibility of returning is very small, because that person has already finished this relationship within himself. The other party understands this only after he leaves. Then questions arise, analysis begins, and the past is remembered. This is the main reason why a silent person does not come back. He does not just leave, he stops feeling this relationship. And this is, honestly, one of the most difficult truths to accept, because a person thinks that everything can be fixed, but where feelings end, it is often impossible to return anything. In the end, there is only one conclusion. To maintain relationships, it is important not only to talk, but also to listen. Especially silent people. Because even if they do not talk, they show a lot with their behavior. Understanding these behaviors in time is one of the main factors that determine whether a relationship will continue or not. Understanding a silent person requires patience and attention. Because since he does not express himself openly, it is important to read his behavior correctly. If this attention is not there, the changes that occur within him are very easy to miss. A silent person actually gives a lot when he is in a relationship. He listens to you, analyzes, understands your strengths and weaknesses. He tries to feel what you feel even if you don't talk. This is not something everyone can do. But when this understanding is not reciprocated, a problem arises. If the silent person feels that the other person does not understand him, does not listen to him, or does not see the value he shows, then a distance forms inside him. This distance is very small at first, He still communicates, he still maintains the relationship. But he is not as open as before. He no longer shares what he used to share. He stays away from certain topics. These behaviors are often perceived as normal change, but in fact, this is the first stage of internal distancing. If the other person is attentive at this stage, he can understand the situation and make changes. But most of the time this does not happen, because people do not take the issue seriously when there is no obvious problem. They think that everything is fine. However, for the silent person, nothing is the same anymore. He analyzes the situation internally and draws his own conclusions. A silent person does not consider it right to fight alone in a relationship. If he feels that only he is making an effort and the other person is not at the same level, this is a serious signal for him. This signal makes him think more. He no longer begins to look at his feelings, but at reality. He compares the relationship not with how it is, but with how it should be. If there is a big difference between these two things, then for him it is inevitable to make a decision. And this decision is not made suddenly. It is formed over a long period of time. Every small incident, every inattention, every misunderstanding brings this decision one step closer. A silent person often does not say anything during this period, because he already solves everything within himself. For him, arguing, explaining, or trying to change someone no longer seems pointless. At this stage, he begins to emotionally distance himself. This is the most critical point in a relationship, because you can still be together physically, but emotionally there is already a distance. This distance grows over time. He is not as interested as before. He is not as attached as before. He does not react as before. And the other person often feels this too late, because the change is not abrupt but gradual. For the silent person, everything is already clear. He has made his decision inside. He is just waiting for the right moment to implement this decision. When this moment comes, he quietly walks away, without any drama, without any long explanations, because he has already said everything inside himself. His departure may seem unexpected to the other person, but in fact, it is the result of a long-term process. This is the reason why the silent person does not come back, since he made this decision not in an emotional state, but in a thoughtful way. He does not need to change it later. For him, coming back means reliving the same thing, and he does not want that. In the end, the other person has to accept only one truth. Losing the silent person happens because you do not understand him. If you could have read his silence in time, perhaps the outcome would have been different. But because that doesn't happen, the relationship reaches this point, and this results in the most difficult questions a person can ask themselves, and the answers to these questions are often the same. Attention should have been shown more.